welcome to everybody for our September Dialogos session. And what we've called it is Octaves, Enneagons, and Healing Spirals. And I hope that you get something out of the session today, and I also hope that you feel really free to contribute, to jump in and ask questions. I call it a Dialogos, these sessions, because the idea is that words go through us and between us. And the real idea behind it is that truth discloses itself relationally. It's not about planting ideas in a tabula rasa in any direction, and that in this relationship, in this exploration, that these ideas touch us in some way and transform us on the inside. And Gurdjieff actually spoke about this as well. I came across this today by a wonderful synchronicity. Is in the Fourth Way book, Ouspensky, he speaks about the relationship between knowledge and being as more important than knowledge, facts, and ideas. So memorizing anything that you see today and trying to stick it in your head and keep it in your mind in the hope that it's going to elevate you in a psycho-spiritual sense is actually useless. And I think most of us know that when we're speaking about the Enneagram from memory and the lines and arrows, and we're trying to remember the triads, it's actually quite meaningless. But when we're speaking about it from our experience and from the heart, and we're speaking from these seeds that have actually germinated in our souls and are helping us to grow, that's when we're speaking the truth. So in these sessions, I really would hope that you don't try and freak out about the Enneagram concept too much. So Gurdjieff was saying, begin with what you do understand. And I really like emphasizing that even in my 11-month coach training course, I say, don't worry. What you take away, there may be 200 gigs of audio-visual materials and workbooks and slides and recordings. Don't worry about getting through all of that. The Enneagram 5s are having a breakdown, and the Enneagram 3s are, everybody's got their own type way of responding to information. And it sometimes evokes a lot of anxiety. So the invitation there and here is whatever lands for real, you take away. And that's also why Sam is going to do an integrating practice. And in every Dialogos session, we do that, so that it's not about presenting information and walking away with your head busy. It's about experiential takeaways that you can start feeling into. And this cool part here, what I really liked, any assimilated and internalized understanding, no matter how small, initiates a cascade of insights. So if you have one of these inner realizations, then that starts shining a light on other areas of your life, and you start noticing patterns. And even if you were only thinking about one thing at the time of the realization, suddenly dots start joining, and that insight attracts more insight. Or not even, I don't want to call it insight, I want to call it deep understanding. So, and when we really understand something, we start changing. Our being, the substance of who we are starts changing. And as that happens, we develop our capacity to integrate more new things. And Gurdjieff speaks about this magnetic center, and that's in the heart. And it's kind of a metaphor in my interpretation for our orientation towards truth and our ability to attract and internalize things that are beautiful, true, and good. And we strengthen that magnetic center through our orientation towards truth. So this is all about really the stuff in Gurdjieff that aligns with this ethos of Dialogos. And the higher emotional center brings in fresh understanding, that's the heart, and the higher mental center brings in more again. And by the higher mental center, we don't mean intellectual, cognitive, crunching ideas. It's about the holy ideas and objective perception of the nature of reality, which we have in tiny little glimmers usually. So that's kind of framing the session. We're going to do a quick intro of who we are, me, Sam, and Rob. Most of you have been to these sessions before and know me from various fora. Takdir transformation is my Enneagram school. Takdir means destiny, in the sense of the acorn is destined to be an oak tree. So that's where the word comes from. It's an Arabic, Persian, and Urdu word. And I offer various courses, and there are lots of ways of accessing my work and finding out what I do. And then I'm going to ask Rob to introduce himself. Over
Hi,
to you.
everyone. So yeah, I'm Robert Hutchinson. I've been working with the Enneagram since about 2017, and I layer it over with ancient wisdom, in particular, ancient Egyptian philosophy, because I find it increasingly, and I was finding it even today in preparing for this session, that understanding more about ancient Egyptology, ancient Egyptian philosophy, allows me to better understand the Enneagram and what people, teachers like Gurdjieff, were talking about. The Enneagram just makes more sense through the lens of Egyptian philosophy, and that's my experience and my passion with working with the Enneagram, and that's what I will be sharing with you today. So my coaching practice is Authentic Life. I offer Enneagram coaching, and I also write on Substack. I've got a publication called Pesedjet, Ninefold Wisdom. And Pesedjet is the Egyptian name for a group of 9. So the Ennead, or the Enneagram, is based on a Greek word. Pesedjet is the corresponding Egyptian word. So do get in touch, and I'll be back a bit later.
Thanks, Rob. And Sam.
Hello, I'm in the UK, so I'm another Brit accent in the room. I'm in Hampshire, and I get excited about the Enneagram when I see the patterns in everything. And I'm going to be a kind of a bookend of the session with an opening 3-centered practice and a closing 3-centered practice. And hopefully when we do the closing 3-centered practice, the dot joining that Ingrid was talking about will be happening, and possibly having these channels of us as having these 3 centers of intelligence will offer opportunities to integrate really what comes from our time together today. My project's called The Soul Shed. I have a Substack too called The Soul Shed. Would love to talk about things over there too. I work with story, imagery, walking in nature, and bringing really intuition and creativity into this Enneagram conversation. So it's really nice to be here. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. So Sam, the first part of your practice, I like to share this image just to get us into this sense of awe and beauty, and now hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so there's a real sort of panoramic sense in this image, and then the image I'm going to share next takes us into something very specific happening in nature which is a fern unfolding. So let me bring the fern unfolding into view. And just spending a bit of time together with an unfolding fern, I think may have something for us as we explore these things together. So in arriving together as embodied humans, I wonder if you could invite your breath to become a little bit more present than perhaps it has been up until right now. And as you take in the image of it's called a fiddlehead, because it's like the head of a violin or a fiddle. And as you take in that shape from nature, just allow your breath to join you there. Notice there are some correspondences already between us, with our spine and our head, our arms and our hands, and this unfolding fern. So I'm going to offer 3 invitations, and the first one is just to take your awareness into your spine a little bit more. Notice how it connects your head, your torso, down to your seat, and orients you on this vertical axis. And allow each in-breath just to call any stray pieces of attention that are somewhere else, just to allow those pieces and parts and stray thoughts to arrive back home as you collect your presence. And see if you can find your seat and gravity anchoring you downwards. And your out-breath might help that. When that feels like you've established, just see if you can invite in an awareness of your head on the top of your shoulders, your uppermost part of you, and your hands resting. So your head and your 2 hands. And next time that you breathe in, see if you can open out your hands and your head upwards and outwards a little bit more. And each time you breathe out, just allow them to relax back into their ordinary position, so that you're just having a little experience of opening and closing along with your breath, and inviting your hands and your head into that with you. And I'm just going to be quiet for a few moments as you find your own rhythm with that. You might find that stretching with the in-breath really helps you to find a deeper connection with your presence. And then let your body just come back to the kind of optimum place in between the opening and the closing. And make any micro adjustments you might like in your posture, in your seatedness, just to feel really quite comfortable and relaxed and settled where you are in space and time. Now let your attention come into your heart space, the space in your chest, and allow your breath to join you there. And notice that as you breathe in, your heart space and your chest and your diaphragm expands, and as you breathe out, it just comes back into a settled place again. So do some breathing there with your heart space, as if that your breath is offering your heart some attention and some curiosity, kind of tending to your heart with your breath. You might notice how your heart is today, maybe a little more than you had before, up to this point in the day. And then as you come back into the room and the image, I'd just like to invite you to notice the effect of this unfolding fern on your heart. Does it make an impression there? And as your gaze traces the shape and the lines of the fern, maybe just allow that to correspond to your breathing. So you're kind of breathing alongside the fern with your heart. Now I'd love you to take your intention, if you would like to, just up into your head space, the space sort of around your head where perhaps illumination might come or inspiration might meet you or a thought might join you. And I'm just going to share a poem about fern, which you might want to just allow to land with you and just notice where it makes its impressions with you as a three-centered being. Fern. Here is the fern's frond, unfurling a gesture, like a conductor whose music will now be pause, and the one note of silence to which the whole earth dances gravely. A dancer, left over among crumbs and remains of God's drunken supper, dancing to start things up again. And they do start up to the one note of silence. The mouse's ear unfurls its trust. The spider takes up her bequest, and the retina reins the creation with a bridle of water. How many went under? Everything up to this point went under. Now they start up again, dancing gravely, like the plume of a warrior returning under the low hills into his own kingdom. So I'm going to hand back to Ingrid now for the next part of our session.
Thanks so much, Sam. And I imagine that that might be enough for many of you today, that you'll take something away just from that. And just so appreciative of that process, a gathering, a sense of homecoming, and also what it's like to encounter something that one cannot comprehend rationally in a poem. And can we allow that? Can we allow that openness and incomprehension? And I think it's quite a helpful attitude when encountering some of the theory that follows, because if we try and get it analytically, it can actually bend our heads a bit. So perhaps we can encounter it slightly metaphorically and see what lands and what we take away. I just want to reiterate the invitation to jump in and not rely on me to be the transmitter of truth. I'm not a fourth way student. I haven't been as exposed to Gurdjieff as many of you, and I'm hoping that I can do a decent job on the basics, but make absolutely no claim to be an expert. So I like to start deductively with the big why of what's going on with this inner work. Why are we even here? What are we doing? When we say healing spirals, what does that even mean? And Gurdjieff spoke about these different man number 1, 2, 3, up to 7. And this is his kind of framing of where this work takes us, where this inner work takes us. And he speaks about man number 1, 2, and 3. And I apologize for the gender label. We're just going to use what he used. Human number 1, 2, and 3 are people living from the mechanical ego with one of their centers basically running the show, which in the Enneagram of personality would be our type. So it's either the gut, the heart, or the head center that's dominating, and we're living from that center with all the concerns of that center. And if we extend that, our type, core fears, fixations. You know, Gurdjieff didn't use the language of type, and he didn't have the Enneagons. Chazo added the Enneagons, but he did speak about our core feature. And when we're asleep, our core feature is running the show, and we're living at quite a literal level of life. We're just getting on with it. We're paying the bills. We're going to work. We're wondering what's for supper, and we're basically asleep. And when we go to the next octave up, the next level up, when we start observing ourselves for a while and trying to remember ourselves. So in Sam's practice, you might have had a moment of, I'm here, there's a me here. Wow, I didn't feel any connection with that sense of me-ness since I was last in a process with Sam, maybe. You know, Gurdjieff says some of us are only awake for about 5 minutes in our lifetime. So this is not easy. It's not something easily attainable to wake up like this. But when we remember ourselves in the sense of, I am here, it's not observing the patterns of my ego necessarily. It's about a sense of I'm here. Self-observing is noticing the patterns of the ego. Then we work towards this balancing of our centers, the awakening of mind, heart, and gut, that all three centers are here, that for, say, the assertive types in the Enneagram of personality, 8, 3, and 7, you've kind of disconnected from the heart center, that the heart awakens. For the 1, 2, and 6, who don't like thinking for themselves but follow authority and are very externally focused, the mind wakes up. And then for the withdrawn types, 9, 4, and 5, the gut center wakes up. And here we are, alive in our power, vitality, and agency, connected with the life force. And when those 3 centers are all awake, then we are starting to look more like what Gurdjieff speaks about with man number 4. So I'm bringing it Chazo and linking it to Gurdjieff. This is not Gurdjieffian thinking when I start speaking about time. But what happens when we wake up is we start caring about the inner work, and it becomes very important to us. It's like, this is actually the most important thing. I don't really care about anything else. This is my number 1 love. The truth is my number 1 love. That's what Alma speaks about. The truth becomes our number 1 love. So we become oriented towards awakening, towards psycho-spiritual evolution, towards wanting this awakeness. We more than other things, it becomes our main kind of existential project, let's put it that way. And we grow in that place, but we can stay there for a very, very, very long time, actually the rest of our life, without the next level of awakening, which is really stabilizing in a way in the virtues and the holy ideas. And what Gurdjieff speaks about as a crystallization of essence, where we start experiencing our essential nature and living from within that essential nature, rather than being governed and driven by the personality. So these higher types of men that he speaks about is when we awaken the higher emotional center, which in the Enneagram of personality is the virtues. So we go from the vices to the virtues, and we start developing this permanent I, which is the part of us that is intentional. So I joke, the part of me that goes to bed and says I must get up for yoga at 6:30 a.m., yay, I'm going to do it. And the part that wakes up in the morning are 2 different people. The one who wakes up in the morning is like, who had that dumb idea? I'm going to stay in bed and go back to sleep. So that means I've got these different I's that are competing. There's a different I, and we can have thousands of them. And it's very difficult to have the true I that is our true will, that is the kind of master of the house. And that's what Gurdjieff is saying we're working towards, is being able to choose. This is freedom. The nature of freedom is the freedom to choose, like that I can follow through. And the true I can say, no, I'm going to have a regular yoga practice and I'm sticking to it. And that's then me. But until we move into these stages, it isn't crystallized and the permanent I isn't in charge. The ego is still running the show. So I can imagine in my head, I'm going to do yoga, but it doesn't happen. I can try wrestling and I can say, okay, well, what the hell's wrong with me? I'm stuck, but I'm not really making progress. We can only really establish this true will at these higher levels of consciousness. So the virtues are then the higher emotional qualities, and the holy ideas are the higher intellectual center qualities. So that's when we start experiencing the world is holy perfection. The world is holy origin. It's not an idea, it's how we see the world. And in the Enneagram, it's called objective consciousness, that we're seeing the true nature of reality, like holy wisdom, holy plan, holy truth, holy love. Like we immersed in the holy ideas and our awareness is transformed. Our sight, Richard Rohr calls it the contemplative set of eyes. So he speaks about 3 sets of eyes, as in eyes. not the first person subjectivity. So the first set of eyes is the senses we're taking in the world. The second set of eyes is our awareness of our own experience. And the third set of eyes is the contemplative eye of true understanding. So that's the higher consciousness. And then at man number 7, this is where you have permanent free will. So people speak about the Buddha, and they say that the Buddha chose every thought. The Buddha did not have one single automatic thought. That's the story as the nature of enlightenment, is I choose where to put my awareness. And that's freedom. That I can actually, my worries, I don't have worries. I don't have that thought loop going on. I don't have the movie of the past projected onto the present. I don't have fantasies of the future. My mind is here in holy perfection. And I can choose what to do with my awareness. So these are the higher qualities. So this is the journey of psychospiritual evolution in Gurdjieff. And yes, it does match the Enneagram of personality. And this is how I'm grounding Gurdjieff in the Enneagram of personality so that it makes more sense to us. Enneagram of personality people are, I'm definitely more in the Enneagram of personality world. So I'm trying to infuse some of these Gurdjieff concepts into something more familiar so that they make sense. So I'm sure most of you here are here because at some point you began your spiritual journey of awakening. And often we go from asleep to awakening because we have a crisis. We have a shock point that's like, my ego strategy is not working anymore. I'm tired of running into walls. I'm tired of the harm that I'm causing to myself and others, whether it's health, finances, relationships. And I notice the emptiness of my ego strategy. And usually that comes with a shock point that's an external shock. So it will be getting retrenched, your partner leaving you, going bankrupt, getting sick, burnout, or it could be a bereavement. Anything that happens that catalyzes a sense of there's more to life than this ego machine, mechanical life. So that's the waking up, often catalyzed by some kind of crisis or loss of some kind, where your idea of yourself is no longer valid and it can't really be sustained. So there's a kind of, not necessarily an ego death, but a sense of this isn't working. Often when you meet a client and you say, how's this Enneagram report landing for you? This is the average levels of health that it describes. You might have seen this stuff 20 years ago. And they say, yes, this is naming what happened to me in my 20s. I woke up from the fact that I was overdoing, serving, helping, being sweet, giving up everything, thinking I could do everything. And one day I was standing in the kitchen and I realized I can't do this anymore. I am so angry. So this is the Enneagram 2 client realizing I'm done with this too. I've got to learn to set boundaries. So the person had the 2 awakening. They didn't know the Enneagram. They arrive in the room having already had something like that. They're on a spiritual journey. They've studied Brene Brown and whoever, all these people out there, and maybe Tara Brach. They've come across teachers, and they're in this stage of doing this work and growing. And they're like, it's been such a wonderful journey to be on this growth journey. And then they meet the Enneagram, and the Enneagram gives them language, and they enter into a new kind of conscious suffering. That's one of the things that it's called, is I'm going to suffer from the feeling of not being needed and feeling rejected rather than doing my type. So that's conscious suffering. For an Enneagram 7, it's everything in me wants to escape this pain, this existential anxiety, this restlessness, and to distract myself from feeling lonely with this, and that. But no, I'm staying with this. I'm just sitting in this restlessness. I'm noticing all these impulses. I'm grasping, writhing, fighting, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing my Enneagram strategy. There's nothing there. I've been in there. I've had enough. And that doesn't always, I'm not giving a personal example that I managed to stay with this suffering so that I don't do my type. But you probably recognize this process, like you working, and then these beautiful moments of experiencing the virtues and the holy ideas. It's like freedom. It's exquisite. In Sufism, it's called a taste, a talk. Shada's here, she can help us with the Arabic pronunciation. But when we get a taste of that divine perspective and freedom in the heart, then it's like, I want that. I only want that. I don't care about anything else. It's the true thing. It's not the fool's gold that the ego promises us. It's the real deal. In Christianity, they speak about the pearl of great price. I don't care if I have to suffer. I want that. So that's a picture of where we're going. And these are kind of the levels in a way. You can see the levels of development in here. These are the octaves. These are the types of man, the stages in evolution. And how this happens is we go around and round and round in the law of seven, shock point, bam. Law of seven, and we're going round and round. We're having mini shocks, we're awakening, we're going backwards, we're falling back. So the octaves are the process by which we level up. And we can stay in one for a very long time. To get around this octave is a big deal. So I'm going to give you a sense of how that happens. Before I do that, I'm going to open the floor, Sam and Rob first, and anyone else who wants to say anything about this, whether that I've got it wrong theoretically, whether it's relatable, whether you've got a story of, oh my God, yes, that happened to me when I was 20, whatever, you're welcome. So Rob and Sam, first I'd like to invite you in and then open to everyone else.
Yeah, thanks. I love the way you've put this together. So yeah, just for me to say, the waking up process, human number 4 is, that it could be a roller coaster. That's when suddenly you start to see yourself, you start to see the world, you start to see friends, family, people you work with completely differently. And we drop in and out of human number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so there's no smooth process here. It's for most people, it's quite a sort of jarring process. And then from the Egyptian perspective, they looked at personality very different than we do. So I'll talk about that a bit later, but they generally are less binary in the way that they see the world and the way that they see human beings and the way that they understood psychology. So the vice and virtue is less of a sort of good and bad duality, and they saw it more as the tension between the two that creates the personality. It's the power, the tension behind the personality. So in some ways this is a simplification, obviously, and we can also look at that tension because we live in the middle zone pretty much. It's very rare that we get to have a sort of Buddha or a Jesus experience. So most people are living in the zone, in the middle zone. If we get to human number 4, that's, for any significant period of time, that's an achievement, and that's a good place to be, and that's where the work is, to be consciously balancing the poles of our personality.
Thank you.
Me.
And just also the law of 3 in what you're saying is tension, manifestation, opposition. reconciling force, that's
It's
also one of the laws at work. So I think there's reference tacitly in there, Rob.
It is the law of three and the reconciling force, the blind force, that force that we're not able to see within the octave, within the cycle, within the unit. We often have to step outside of the unit. We have to step to a higher octave to be able to see the reconciling force that we were dealing with when we didn't realize we were, and we weren't aware of it, and we were blind to it. And that's a bit of Gurdjieff that I really appreciate and like, that the idea working with the blind force, the reconciling force that we just can't see.
So that would be in the asleep, we're going back and forth, bashing our heads, and then we have a moment.
Yeah, we're in duality. We're being, we see the world in black and white, good and bad, good and evil, black and white, and we're just bouncing back and forwards on the pole.
And when we're in the virtues and the holy ideas experientially, then we're able to hold both. Like that's being able to be with duality. So thanks for bringing that in. That's really helpful. And Sam?
I was just thinking about how it can be quite a strange thing to sort of feel like being at a threshold or something like an in-between place, where one sort of, I'm going to call it an octave because it's the language that we're talking about, but one kind of way of being in the world no longer kind of makes sense, but there's not stability somewhere else either.
Yes,
exactly. And this kind of back and forthing. And I'm noticing that at the moment, what I seek is a stability, a sort of an emotional stability where there is a more anchored sense of self. And I'm noticing that actually, I used to have a more anchored sense of self, but it was somewhere that no longer makes sense when I try to go back there. But there isn't coherence in this place where I am now either. So I'm sort of thrashing around quite a lot. And I'm noticing that practices, particularly somatic and body, and practices that are three-centered really help me to stabilize and find temporary balance, at least, which then becomes a reference. Like, oh, I can feel balanced even if it's when I'm doing yoga and breath work, and then I have a wonky day, but there's somewhere to return to. And I'm also thinking that there are kind of key people in this work that I feel like I'm journeying alongside with, who that I can then find a shared language to be doing this kind of work with, and that's part of why I appreciate these opportunities and these gatherings and these spaces so much. And the Enneagram community, when it's orienting to this kind of thing, it can be quite lonely to do it by myself, and I really, really appreciate finding others that are walking along the path as well, where there's that shared recognition of shared language, really, to describe these experiences.
Absolutely. And that's this values relation to the Sangha or school. I mean, it can be, we could change this. We could say tribe, we could say noble friends. That's how the Enneagrams speak about it. I'm not sure exactly where they got it. It might be from Christianity or Buddhism or wherever, Sufism. But this idea that we can't do the work alone, that we need the support and the reference points to be able to compare notes and to validate these experiences, so that there's a consensus reality that we're not confabulating the journey. There are transformations happening to us, and we recognize them in each other, and we meet each other on that frequency. And yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about the Enneagram community being often a space like that. When it's not reductive, when it's not just talking about the quirks of type and I'm a 7 and whatever, you all know what that means. But I really love what you're saying also about the stabilizing in a totally new way, because we might have felt stable in our old pattern. You know, we kind of functioning quite well. If you look at the adult ego development theory, there's conforming, specializing, performing. They're doing really well. Then they go through a stage called internal balancing, where everything kind of falls apart, and that's not making sense anymore. It doesn't allow for the complexity of shadow integration and new parts of the self. And awakening often means that people are shed in your life because they're not oriented to truth and the things that matter to you anymore, or they weren't, and you care about that. You don't want to do that stuff anymore. And so your old strategy does feel very unstable because you haven't consolidated in this new world, and often we don't have the support when our old strategy falls apart. So I think it's very, very helpful to have a community. I've always been very lucky because I've been surrounded by these kind of people my whole life. I know a lot of people whose family of origin is absolutely not oriented to the inner work, and they struggle for quite a long time to realize, I'm not alone, I'm not weird, there's nothing to be ashamed of about kind of falling apart and questioning myself and not really fitting in with mainstream normal values anymore, because mainstream normal values are largely capitalism, which is very much here. It's very much just kind of satisfying primary needs and narcotizing ourselves a lot and, you know, buying stuff to feel better. So that's happening here. When we start awakening, that stuff doesn't fill us, and we notice that it doesn't fill us. So that's really, I think, almost
I'm
the
giving
most...
you a little time check, Ingrid.
Thank you. And then to get a bit more into the law of 7, which is the octaves. The law of 7 is the law of octaves and the law of process. And what the law of 7 tells us is that it's not step by step by step by step that we progress. We progress a bit, then we fall back, then we need to make much more effort, and then we don't carry on with the effort, and oh no, I haven't done any meditation for a month, and now it's even harder to start again. So I'm going to give you a practical example to illustrate that this discontinuity. So I put that piano picture because it maps kind of to the musical scale in octaves that we go around. So here's an example. So I decide, okay, cool, I am gonna start meditation every day, an hour a day. This is striking a dough, the initial impulse. Yippee, I'm enthusiastic about it, and I think this is a great idea. This is something I want to do. There's so many benefits. What a great thing to have a meditation habit. It's all fresh. Off we go. Start organizing, buy a lovely cushion, a meditation blanket, download the app, join a group. Everything's like cool. I've set up the whole thing. Start going, sit, go for a few days, then begin to notice, when I just check Facebook while everyone's meditating, and you realize, oh, I'm going to have to deal with this resistance. Nothing spectacular is happening. I'm sitting here and all these thoughts are just going on, and this is actually not as fun as I thought it would be. And so then we're hitting the first obstacle, the first shock. And then we're encountering all these obstructions and obstacles. Our enthusiasm is faded by then. The mind says, too busy, this isn't working. So these things come, and all these impulses, and then if we don't get through that shock point, then we fall back to do. And then it's like, oh, well, that didn't work. No, it doesn't work for me. And we lose the energy, we lose the inertia, and it's more difficult to start again with the new do. There's more uphill. We've actually gathered inertia. And if you're a 7, you're going to relate to the fact that you've probably started 100 new things and gotten to the first shock point, and yeah, I'm going to try something else. So that's what happens there. And then it is more complex than this. I'm making it really simple the first time. Then we get to 5. If we push through, if we get past, there's a stabilization. The practice begins to take root. It's not established yet, but we're not relying on that initial do impulse. We're actually settling a bit into it, and the practice is beginning to feed itself. There's an experiential momentum that provides nourishment. We know, oh, I want to go there, even if I don't feel like it right now. I want that. And then in the 6th shock point, in this very simplified 2D version, there's a new resistance, a boredom, a plateauing, or the temptation to treat meditation as a mechanical duty. So I know quite a lot of Muslims who treat their salah 5 times a day as just, okay, I'm just going to do it. I say the prayer. They don't really hear the prayer. They don't notice the words. It's mechanical. And then this is the point at which it would be re-enlivened with what's really happening here, and getting back to the why and bringing qualitatively different attention to the process. So that's the 6 is a conscious shock. You might have had that with the Enneagram. I have. But 2 or 3 years ago, I said to my coach, I said, I'm sick of this Enneagram, I'm bored. And I feel like I kind of know what it's about. And he said, oh, so you know everything about human nature. And I just laughed. And then I got back into the Enneagram, and I got myself this incredible early book, Don Riso and Russ Hudson, Understanding the Enneagram. Opened it randomly. Oh my God, I've got another 100 years of work to do. So that's what happens at 6. It's doing the same stuff, but with a new consciousness. And then you get a higher quality of attention. And if you get through and you get to the last shock point, which is between C and Do in the octave, then you get to strike a new Do, which happens at 3. It's a new level. You've leveled up. Yay. And then it's gone from the first Do is, I want to try meditation. This is a great idea. Do 2, I'm established in the path of inner work. And the next phase or level demands. At this phase or level, I might decide I'm going on a solitary retreat, a silent retreat for 5 years in a cave. That might be the second Do. You're going to encounter all the resistance. You're going to be sitting in the cave, freezing and angry and thinking, what the hell am I doing? This is so boring. You're going to go through another cycle. And you're going to think, oh, I thought this was going to be so amazing. It's actually damn boring and I'm lonely. So we're going to be going through the cycle. And to finish each cycle, the C Do requires some kind of sacrifice. So I've mapped out what it takes to get to the next octave. Sammy, I don't know if I can have a couple of extra minutes here. Is that okay?
I think you better ask Rob.
Rob, can I have a couple of extra minutes?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, cool. So we're doing these octaves. The first one is being a basic animal, eating, sleeping, watching Netflix, going to the mall. That's the black here on the inside. Then we wake up and we start the second octave at 3. And that's where, as Rob said, the air is introduced. Let's not worry about the elements too much. That's a whole other rabbit hole. Then we're like, oh, hey, wait a minute, I'm awake. We become conscious and we bring awareness, sincerity, And this level is attentional orienting towards acquiring unity. So that's that middle level. The man 4 piece is, I'm alive and I want to realize, what is consciousness? What does it mean to be a person? What is this? What is this universe? So then the second octave, we're doing that. We go around, and then the next, oh, you can see these octaves aren't finished because they require work. The first one is finished because it's kind of given. As an animal, it just happens. But at the higher levels, it requires that extra conscious, intentional effort. And this Enneagram stuff is all about that, as you know. And then when we get to these higher worlds, there's less density, it's less mechanical. Like world 96, it's very mechanical. This is how it works, capitalism. And as we get to the higher worlds, we have a totally different perspective of reality. We're not caught in that. We see synchronicities. We don't see linear time. We see chiasm, is what Cynthia Bourgeois calls it. So, for example, you could go to a workshop and you think you're there to do that, and then you have one conversation with somebody at the coffee machine, and it's one of those moments, and you realize that's the entire magnet. That's the whole reason that thing happened, and everything led to that moment. So that's a different sense of time and space. It's much more kairos time than chronos time. So the way that we get around the Enneagram is we go from one octave to the next, and every time between Si and Do, at the completion of the octave, if we complete the octave, we get the new Do. So the first Do here, bing, we go around, Do, Re, Mi, we're going around, Do, Re, Mi, boom, boom, boom. And then if we complete the octave, and we may never, the new Do happens at this point 3, and then we go around the green. Go around the green, go around the green. If we complete the green, then the next shock point is at 6, and that's the higher awakening. So this is my understanding of the basics, and I hope that this is right. I'm gonna definitely just want to hand over to Peggy, because you have read the book 3 times. Is this making sense? Am I on the right track? Is this landing for you?
Yes, it's different from how I understand it, but it's just little nuanced, and I find it very interesting because like when it's how I interpreted it, that the first Do was given. Well, this is the one at the top. I thought it was at the first shock, unconscious shock, that was given. So no, I like it the way you present it, and these, because in one octave, the 2 conscious shocks is what I thought was the double attention, that Uspensky talks about, because he says that it has to be while you're receiving an impression, you have to have this openness, to receive and not identify, be in the I, even if you're in the personality too, have the 2 consciousness together. It's like the third 3 forces, So fun. I like to talk about this,
Oh, no, exactly. But the first Do is struck at 9. And then at the 3, there's the shock in the first octave. And then there's another shock in the first octave. And those are those points of waking up and realizing the split awareness of I'm here, I'm self-remembering, and I'm self-observing what's going on in my experience. I'm self-observing my reactivity, but there is an I here, which isn't there most of the time. And then if we complete the octave, then we start the next do. But there are 2 shocks within each octave. You're quite right.
Conscious shocks.
Yeah.
Can
Rob, you want me to put the picture back up?
Yeah, if you could. Yeah, if you could. I just want to, there's something to clarify that, there we go. So I think it's really important to clarify 2 things. We're talking about 2 things. So octave number 1 must be completed before we can go into octave number 2. It's a higher octave. And then octave number 2 needs to be completed before we can move up to octave number 3.
Yes.
Now, that's one thing. The other thing that's happening is that we start here on octave 1, do, re, mi, and then we need a do from another place to come as an external shock. So so it's kind of matrixed, it's kind of complicated, but we're talking about completing 1 octave first, then another octave, then another octave. At the same time, we're having the do from a second octave, which is not necessarily the higher octave. It's an external do coming into the system.
Yes.
So we're talking about 2 things, separate things. Does that complicate or does it clarify?
I think
okay. No, but it's because the do that comes in, the way you explained it is that you have to get the C do to benefit from it. But probably it happens anyways because you met the mi fa, the mi fa first. You did your work, you know.
Yes.
So it comes in, but you won't benefit from it if you don't continue with the next do.
Right. So Urania speaks about how the shock points are like mouths. That's where things can come in. And if you make the most of them, and if you transmute those experiences, and they do make an impression on you and you assimilate them, this is where it's like, am I allowing life to touch my heart? Our ego is trying to prevent life from touching our heart. That's the whole freaking purpose of the thing, is to resist. But when these shocks come in and we let life transform us and we notice our transformation, then we can go through that shock point, benefit from it, and complete the octave. So here's where the octave completes for the first one. And if we complete, then we level up from the first to the second. And then it's a new do, starts in the second, and we go and complete that octave all the way around. And then the C do in the second octave is here. So if we complete the second octave, then we get the third do, which happens here. And that in the third do is where we have fana in Sufism, the annihilation of the ego, the emptying of self, the objective perception that actually there's no independent self. I don't even exist as an independent ego. It's the kind of emptiness of non-identity, and definitely non-identification with our type. So each leveling up requires things which I already spoke about in that first slide of the spiral. So to get from here to there requires that, to get from here to there requires that. So this is a kind of 2D version of what it means to complete here and complete here to level up. So I'm going to stop there with my piece because I want to hand over to Rob. But I hope this thing is starting to make a bit more sense, because I was watching videos all day, every day, and bashing my head in and talking to John Lakovich on Facebook and looking at all these books, trying to actually land this thing in a way that made practical sense to me. Like, what do I have to do? What's going on? And I realized through this process that I'm in kindergarten still. You know, after years and years of this thing, you know, it's like, okay, let's go play in the sandpit and hopefully have a moment of awakening. But that's kind of my sense that came out of it. And I think Gurdjieff was trying to tell us that, like, most of the time we're actually bullshitting ourselves about where we are. There's a Buddhist teacher who certainly says that. He says, if you think you're having these spiritual experiences, you're very likely to be confabulating.
Can you just put the food and the air and the impression slide up again?
Sure.
Just to clarify again, so I'm not talking about the shocks coming in, the does at the shock points, but just talking about concentric octaves. We start at do with just food. We get air coming in here. So now we've got food and air as we go around 4 and 5. By the time we get to 7, we've got food, air, and impressions, which allows us to get to C, and then hopefully we cross that the ultimate shock point, C to do, to the higher octave. Then we start the higher octave again just on food. So it's back to square one again. We're back to home base again. And then we've got a whole nother octave of growth. So just to sort of, as the basics, is to stay within one octave without getting too confused about the external octaves coming in at the shock points. We have to complete one octave with food, air, and impressions to enable us to get to the next octave, and so on. So hopefully that clarifies.
Yeah, so that would probably be my example of now I'm sitting in the cave on my silent retreat, and now I'm hungry and bored and kind of feeling like a lonely animal. That's the food level. And then what are the impressions? Noticing the impressions and hopefully going through to the point that something's going on. So maybe that's a helpful analogy.
Right.
So yeah, so can we hand over to you, Rob, and you can
Let's have a look.
layer on the next layer. Peggy, I wonder if there's anything you want to just wrap up with on that. I saw that you were kind of maybe anticipating. Is there anything you want to say?
No, it's wonderful. The place where the impressions are, it's as if all the work is there. It's like how to do the double attention. Remembering is the work to do there, and this needs a big loop to look at it, because there's so many branches to clean up, to do it right, not doing the right work.
Exactly. And then there's a whole piece.
Wrong work.
Exactly, 100%.
We didn't get caught.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in Sufism, they talk about that misguided effort. In Christianity, where you start getting rigid about the religion and whatever, you're off track. So going around impressions, and then in Gurdjieff, there are all kinds of analyses about levels 5, 6, and 7. Like if you do 5 without doing 4, if you get 6, then you're kind of screwed. So the wrong work message is key, like doing the right work. Yeah, thank you for adding that.
Yeah, because staying in the 4 and balancing the 3 centers to do it right, clarifying the mind, the emotions, and everything. This is long work.
It's huge. Absolutely. It's a lifetime. Absolutely. We should actually just have a detour from that word impressions into a massive Enneagram with a swamp and monsters. But thanks for that, Peggy. I'm really grateful you added that. So let's hand over to Rob for an Egyptian perspective, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end for some sense making. But maybe if you can just allow all that stuff, if you've got any confusion and whatever, just let it go and let's see what arises now. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, let's have a look at this thing. Right, as always, what I plan to happen, you have to do it in a certain order. If you don't do your share, it never works properly. So let's try this. There we go. So
The octave of sharing, it has to be in steps.
every single time. So you're going to see that for a moment, and then I have to click play, and then hopefully you'll see the right thing. Is that working?
It's in transition. We're still seeing
There
this.
we go.
There we go. Perfect.
Right. Just going on a go slow now. Where have we gone? What's it doing? It does this every single time to me. We did a tech before we started, and then it does this. Okay, right. There we go. Found it. Thank you for bearing with me. Right, okay. So let's start here. Let's start at the beginning. So we're looking at I am the eternal. I am Ra. I am that which created the word. I am the word. And this is from the Egyptian book of coming forth into the daylight. And the Egyptian texts, they speak, they repeatedly stress the belief of creation by the word. And it's very important to understand that it's the spoken word. So this is all about sound. Sound is what kicks off the creation of the universe. And that text from the Egyptian book of coming forth into the day, it's also known as the Book of the Dead, might look and sound a little bit like that text from the Christian New Testament. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And again, it's important words are so important, and this whole text in the Christian Bible has been mistranslated, as some of you might know. What it implies is it's a word when it's not actually a word. The word in Latin was verbum. Verb is more accurate than word, and the original word in ancient Greek was logos, which is word, but it's also reason, principle, or speech. So we're coming back towards that Egyptian concept of the universe, the cosmos being created by the spoken word, speech, in other words, sound. And this flows through into our language. We can discover a lot about mythology and philosophy through language. It's all built into the language that we use. The word universe comes from universus, which means a unity, a whole, one whole turn. Well, we've just been talking about that in the octaves, haven't we? One whole turn as one whole octave, one whole path round the Enneagram. And a person is from the Latin persona, which means through sound. And persona also was developed through Latin, and it means the theatrical mask through which a sound comes. So we can also have that translated across to personality, questions and development. What's the mask we're hiding behind? What's the mask of our type? How are we masking reality from ourselves as well? It's not just an external mask, it's also an internal mask. And I love language. Interestingly, if you believe in coincidences, I love coincidences. Pair in Egyptian means the house of. So a persona, mixing a bit of Egyptian, Latin, and English would be the house of sound. And one of the most healthy things we could do is to sing, especially in groups. To sing in a choir is one of the most healthy for our physical health, our mental health. It's one of the most safe things we can do in terms of regulating the nervous system. We're regulating our breathing, we're singing together, we're making noise together. That means I'm safe. That means I'm safe in my own body, and I'm safe in this body of bodies, which is the choir that I'm singing in. So we're starting off with sound, with noise, with music, and of course, beyond sound, this relationship between the relationship between music and astronomy in Egyptian was incredibly strong. Ingrid and I went to the temple of Hathor in Dendera, and Hathor is the goddess, or the nature, the principle of music and enjoyment. She's the concept of excellence and beauty. If you go to that temple, what's fascinating is it's also a vast solar observatory. You walk around, and it's all about the zodiac. The zodiac is there in various different forms, and you can see there are sort of slots for watching stars. So the musical scale was very important to the Egyptians. The seven Hathors. Hathor was one principle, one goddess, but also she came in the number seven, so it fits in with this law of seven, the seven steps. Hathor was related to the seven celestial bodies of the solar system. So without a telescope from the Earth, you can see the sun, the moon, and the five planets, the five visible planets of the solar system. So they moved together, and Hathor also represented the seven notes of the musical scale. And we know for a fact that the Egyptians used the same seven-note scale that we do, from images, and they left a lot of instruments for us that we still have. Amazing harps that would have been tuned in a way that we would have recognized. Flutes and other instruments, guitar-like instruments, zither-like instruments as well. So there were a lot of different instruments, and we know that they understood music in the way that we do. So this is the hymn of the seven Hathors. It's from Dendera. The sky and its stars make music to you. The sun and the moon praise you. The Neteru exalt you, and the Neteru sing to you. And the Neteru, there are principles or gods. So it's so simple, but it's powerful, and also the stanzas in Egyptian are built in sevens. So maybe I'll read that again. The sky and the stars make music to you. The sun and the moon praise you. The Neteru exalt you, and the Neteru sing to you. And the seven Hathors were present as a person's birth as well. They were present as a person takes their first breath of life. So very, very important concept. And it's interesting that the seven Hathors are there at birth, at the beginning of the very first Enneagram that we walk around, or that we experience in life. So they're representing this seven step or seven pattern understanding that was very important to the Egyptians, and they represent an intimate relationship between music. There was dance as well. There was a lot of rhythm in Egyptian music, and well-being as well. So musical healing was very much an important part of Egyptian advanced medical understanding. So here we're going back a little bit to what Ingrid was talking about and looking at it through the lens of this amazing statue. We've looked at this before in these sessions. There's Ramesses III in the middle, Pharaoh in the middle, being flanked on either side. On the right, as we're looking to it, is Set. That's the lower self, so could be associated with the lower octave. Pharaoh is in the middle octave, and the higher octave is Heru or Horus. So they're both blessing. This is the bit I was talking about earlier about in Egyptian, the personality is driven by the tension between the lower self and the higher self. And in the Egyptian mythology, the higher self and the lower self are in many battles. There are many fights between Set and Heru. Equilibrium isn't established, or the true nature of balance of the cosmos isn't established until Heru and Set agree to agree, and that's via the intellect. But in this model of octaves, we've got Pharaoh in the middle. Pharaoh's in that middle space, and it's Pharaoh is that middle octave where we learn to be spirit human. We're never in Egyptology, you're never sort of escaping. It's perfectly logical, right? We can't escape this body in this life. So you're not trying to escape the vice. You're not trying to escape the animalistic part of us, the dualistic part. What we want to do is bring the two into concert together, so that they're in conversation, they're in communication, they're in communion with each other. And that's the message that we get from the Egyptian mythology. We'll also just look at, there are 9 parts of the soul in Egyptian mythology, but these are, I'm pulling out 3 for simplicity. I'm pulling out 3. The Ka is the life force. This is the energy of life that is within us, and the Ka arrives with us at birth. With that first breath is when the Ka is administered to us via the breath. This sort of life force, although it's at the lower octave, it's associated often with a bull. You'll see it associated with a phallus, and also you won't probably see it associated with a vagina. In our patriarchal academic world, the focus is often on the male aspect of the Ka. But being Egyptian, they looked at both sides. They're more non-dual. They're very happy with male and female aspects of the same person, or the same god, or the same concept. So we have both phallus and vagina within the words for Ka, which is really vital in terms of understanding this. Otherwise, it just becomes some sort of patriarchal masculine force, which it isn't in Egyptian. Ka or cow. Cow also means food, and that's interesting because we had food on the first part of the Enneagram that we were looking at, and it does make you wonder, what did Gurdjieff have access to this sort of learning either directly or indirectly? It does make you wonder, because often when you go to the Egyptian, it's direct. Gurdjieff's getting it right, more or less. So that's the Ka, that's the life force, that's the lower octave. And then we move up to the Ba, which is in the middle octave. So this is signified by a bird with a human head. So this is in between sort of the human and the spiritual. And it's interesting because we've got birds associated obviously with air again, haven't we? So again, we've got the parallel with what Gurdjieff was talking about in his octave. And the Ba is able to travel freely between heaven and earth. So it's got this ability to travel between, and that's what we've sort of been talking about, isn't it, in terms of that man number 4, as Ingrid was presenting. It's that in between place where we're able to access the higher spiritual self, but also being within the lower self as well.
Rob, can I say something
Yes, of
about
course.
the
Come on
bar?
in. Yeah,
Is
come
that
on.
bar is the place of impressions and memories and orientation towards spirituality. That bar is the part of us that chooses the light, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And that leads on to the light, which is the Ak. It's also known as the shining one. The symbolism is a bird, that's the ibis. It's the Ak bird. It's also Jehuti, and it's the symbolism of the intellect. And you were mentioning earlier, Ingrid, weren't you, the higher intellectual self. It's not higher thinking. It's a integrated, holistic integration of the three centers, which is what it's talking about there.
And that gets carried forward in Greek philosophy with the cultivation of reason. It's not the cultivation just of the ability to think logically, which is how we think about reason. The cultivation of reason is the cultivation of mind, the faculty of mind, and later on, mind being aware of itself. When mind becomes aware of itself, that's when we really awaken to these the higher forms, the Platonic forms, and later in Aristotle, it's the true nature of mind is actually inherently divine. So it's really beautiful how this kind of tripartite model of the human being carries forward. And obviously it gets solidified in ways that are quite reductive, but tracing the core idea of this three-centered being is really, really helpful. Yeah, thanks, Rob.
I've got two more slides, if that's all right, for timings, and then we'll go into the integration. So staying with the healing spirals, this is another way of looking at exactly the same thing. Absolutely love this this image. It's called Sematawi, the uniting of the two lands in Egyptian. And it shows you Set and Heru, Horus, exactly as we saw them in the statue, but here they're actually the other way around here. Set is on the left as we're looking at Horus, Heru is on the right. And they're retying, they're coming together in a retying of the higher and the lower self, the higher octave and the lower octave. And where Pharaoh would have been is that middle, it's actually the windpipe, that vertical line in the middle. And it's got the name of the pharaoh at the top in the oval shaped sign that we can see, which is the name of the pharaoh here is Hepa, which is the beetle. Ka is the raised arms, and then Ra is the sun at the top. Hepa means to come into being. Ka is the life force. We already talked about that. And Ra is one iteration of the supreme creative principle of energy. So it's solar energy and the light of awareness itself. So there we get that nice link to the Ak. So what it's saying here is that we are getting the manifestation of the Ka of Ra. When we tie together the higher and lower self, we're enabling the manifestation of the Ka, the life force of Ra, the supreme spirit. And this, interestingly, is conceptually, this is the origin of the Latin word religare, which means to retie, and that becomes religion in English. So conceptually, this is the origin of the concept of the word religion, which is a long way away from the concept that is generally understood, I think, at the moment today. It's talking about tying together, reuniting the lower self and the higher self. And it's so simple. I mean, look at that image. You could, it's so simple to transmit what it needs to say with just a little bit of explanation.
And Rob, isn't that the perfect image of integration? We're talking about the
Absolutely,
integration of
100%.
consciousness. It's mind, heart, body. It's all our centers. It's our consciousness that's what's going on. I mean, the 9 domains of integration in Daniel Siegel. It's top down, bottom up, interpersonal, narrative. There are all these ways in which it's tying together the various aspects of our experience.
Yeah, and if there was any doubt, just to make it really clear, what the hieroglyphs here are saying are he gives life to all, stability, strength, the great God, Lord of the sky. And then on the, sorry, I don't know if you can see my my cursor, that was on the right side above Horus. On the left side, above Set, the hieroglyphs read, he gives life to all, strength, stability, strength, Lord of the Lord of the land of Upper Egypt. So we've got heaven and earth there as well. So we've got also conceptually, we've got the idea of as above, so below from the Hermetic philosophy. So just one more slide to finish, just to bring this, just to emphasize, if we hadn't emphasized it enough, one of the other 9 aspects of the soul is what's called Ren. It's the name. And the name in Egyptian was, once again, it was really important because when you say a name, it brings a thing to life. It brings a thing into manifestation, into existence. So the spoken name for Egyptians, they understood that and the way that they actually created words and the language, if only we knew exactly how it was spoken, the words they used actually evoked objects, concepts, ideas, etc. So the word lost my words now. The word it embodies the energetic being of the thing itself. And then Ren, just look at the hieroglyphs on the left. So we've got the mouth-like symbol, that's the R, and then the wavy-like symbol is the N. So we've got a mouth, the mouth-like symbol represents the mouth, and then we've got the wave symbol represents sound waves. So again, we're back to the importance of sound, sound waves, music, notes, etc., from the very beginning, from the outset in Egyptian philosophy. And I think this is nice, this idea of the Ren, the name, because it reminds us to name each step, to name each note on our journey of self-development, of spiritual development, our journey around the Enneagrams, because by naming something, we bring it to life and we energize it. And it's a bit like a mini shot 0.3, isn't it? It brings it out of a conceptual idea. If we say it out loud. Whenever we're talking about words in Egyptian, remember we're primarily talking about the spoken word because that was also important to them. But yeah, you've got a question.
Not a question, but this has been a very interesting presentation. I think you might appreciate it going back to the previous slide that you had, and also to the upward spiral that Ingrid presented. Seeing that and her description of it, I was reminded, yeah, the slide before that. Yeah, I was reminded that in Achazo's presentation, his basic system is outlined, in a series of levels called the scarab.
Right.
And if you go back to here, there is a scarab.
Yeah.
And so that was one connection that occurred to me, early on when Ingrid was presenting. And so I really appreciate this description because it, things parallel and fit together. So anyway, thanks.
The scarab beetle is very, very important in ancient Egyptian, and you'll see it everywhere. And it's the coming into being. It's the manifestation. That's what it means. It was the scarab beetle that symbolically pushed the sun across the sky, but more importantly, it's about coming into being rather than that. So it's the scarab beetle that actually births the sun over the eastern horizon at the beginning of the day. It's very important. So yeah, it's interesting that Ichazo was using that as well.
Well, and at the top, it's starting down at the physical body and then moving up, and halfway through, you get what you would call the pharaoh. So the lower 9 are set.
Yeah.
Right in the center is the pharaoh.
Yeah.
And the upper ones are the virtues, holy ideas, so forth. And then at the top of the scarab is the eternal trinity and the absolute.
Oh,
Okay.
beautiful.
So
And
it was
also,
fine.
Yeah.
9 levels. But also what's coming to mind there, Rob, and we spoke about it in Egypt, is what scarab beetles do is the seeds are planted in the, decayed matter, feces of animals, and it's through working with that matter that new generation comes into possibility. So for me, that's a great metaphor of like the level 4 work of working with what comes our way, working with decomposed matter, digesting it, rolling it, moving it, like so in the kind of symbolic meaning of scarabs in other systems, it's about that transmutation and planting seeds in that dome.
That's our karma is our treasure.
Exactly.
Treasure.
Our seeds are in that karma. Thanks for that link to Chazo. I didn't know about that the scarab beetle is the one going up the levels. That's so cool. Thank you.
Well, I thought Robert would appreciate that because there are other. I think Chazo used some Egyptian work. Because some of his terms, hark back to things like that.
Great.
Like when you talk about Ka, in Eureka, you talk about Kath, which is the body center. And, and that's the first thing to develop. So you have a foundation to build on and so forth. So anyway,
that's cool. And I guess the bottom layer is also about the instincts, because if our instinctual preoccupation is the engine of our type, if we can't work with our dominant instinct, then it's very difficult to work with our type at all, because our type is just a way of managing our instinct. So I guess the Kath center and the instincts, that's where we start the work.
Well, it splits out like the 18th sphere in the scarab is the body centers. And then the 17th is the, he calls it the cognitive mind, but it's really not cognition or anything like that. It's the, let's see the way it's phrased, it's the resonances of the interactions of the body centers in the mind.
Wow.
So
that's like impressions, right?
So it's it's pre-intellectual. It's just the sensations.
Okay.
And then the next step up is the 2 poles, the sexual and unity. And then above that are the instincts, and out of the instincts come the fixations.
Interesting. Well, we're definitely going to be inviting
That's
you
the
to
progression.
do a session with us about the Erica work.
Yeah, I also really liked your meditation example. You know, that's I used that, well, it's something very similar, the way you were describing it, in the chapters in the book of limericks that I wrote,
Oh, cool.
which
Will
I
you
put up.
put a link? Will you put a
Yeah,
link to your book in the chat?
Well, I put the chapter titles. Let's see here.
Yeah, if you could just put a link in there and we can reference it and link people. How are we doing for time? We've got to move on, I think, to Sam's closing practice. We're probably going to run over a bit. We're supposed to end on the hour, but usually we stay for extra time for a bit of Q&A and sharing. So it won't be a hard stop unless you need to rush off, Sam. But perhaps, is it okay, Bert, if we go on from Erica and Echazo to Sam's practice, our integration practice?
Yeah, just a second. So there's one thing. The chapter titles here, and they're going on a counterclockwise cycle.
Ah.
So the first do is at 6. The second one is at 3.
Or the first shock point, you mean?
First shock point, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the first one is the receptivity that a person has to have.
Yeah.
And the second one is the acceptance that they have to make.
Beautiful. I love this. This is like the hero's journey, and they're different versions of this. I know Michael Goldberg has also got an anti-clockwise version of the hero's journey. Thank you. This is cool. I'm going to copy and paste this and explore it further.
Yeah, so that was it. And let's.
Very, very cool. Thank you. I love it.
Thanks. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks so much, Bert. Sam.
Okay, well, so we really hope that you'll stay with us and share your reflections and questions and thoughts. But really having a moment of pause now to self-connect, self-remember, come back into an awareness of ourselves as three-centered beings is an opportunity for the content to maybe land a bit more and start to join its dots inside you and around you and within you and without you. And so I think revisiting the fern is a beautiful symbol for us, not only because it's got the sacred geometry of the spiral in it, but because it went back even further than the Egyptians. And you know, the only thing really that came before the fern was the mosses and the liverworts. So it was a really, really early form of plant life doing its thing on the planet. And what we see now is the understory of tree canopies. There were no trees when fern was first here. So it was literally unfurling itself into the skies. You know, it was doing its thing into the great beyond. So that just fills me up with a lot of wonder. So anyway, if you would like to, the invitation is to just come back into this sense of yourself as something that can unfurl and open and close. And I will bring the imagery back. And hang on. There we are. So in just contemplating the fern, the unfolding fiddlehead with its unfoldings within its unfolding, surrounding with what has already unfolded and within it what is yet to unfold, just like to invite you to be with your breath, unfolding and folding you. And your breath would be breathing itself even if you weren't attending to it. But just for the next few moments, let's attend to this folding and unfolding that's so available to us in a very simple way. And as you breathe in, allow the unfolding to happen within your body, within your hands, within your head. And as you breathe out, just allow that settling and that coming back inwards to happen. So you're breathing in and you're unfolding. You're breathing out. And you're relaxing, settling, and coming back into a kind of a homeostasis. And oxygen really is a kind of food. So allow that intake of oxygen to really resource you. Notice your spine and how it might want to furl and unfurl a little with your breathing. Maybe just really feel into, not observing now, but really being inside your hands as they can create a fist and a tightness, but they can also open out very wide and create a span. And as you invite your body into this meaning making with the fern, see if your heart would like to join in now and just show its condition to yourself as you breathe around and in and with your heart space. Maybe there are some impressions that are landing for you in your heart. And maybe there's something within this session that has touched you in a new way and given you an experience that can be best described as a heart experience. And as you keep on breathing along and staying with this sense of body, being an embodied human, a breathing human, I'm just going to read the poem again and see how it lands with you this time as it bookends this part of our session. And allow the meaning making just to flow in the way that it wants to within you and within your centers of meaning making, within your intelligences. Fern. Here is the fern's frond, unfurling a gesture, like a conductor whose music will now be pause, and the one note of silence to which the whole earth dances gravely. A dancer left over among crumbs and remains of God's drunken supper, dancing to start things up again. And they do start up to the one note of silence. The mouse's ear unfurls its trust. The spider takes up her bequest, and the retina reins the creation with a bridle of water. How many went under? Everything up to this point went under. Now they start up again, dancing gravely, like the plume of a warrior returning under the low hills into his own kingdom. Thank you. And as you just come back to our shared connection on the screen, I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other again and hand back over to Ingrid.
Let's take a moment to sense the impressions of our time together in our being, and how are we different to how we arrived? Because we most certainly are in some ways. So let's just take a moment to go inside and sense some subtle quality that we may have become aware of. In Sufism, they talk about unveilings and constantly establishing resonance with the beloved. So what's happened for you? As a felt sense, maybe there's a word. And if a word did come up for you or arrive for you, perhaps you'd like to write it in the chat. One clearly arrived for me. I'm going to type mine in. Sense of gathering. Mm. And let's say the words, because of how important sound is. Sam, would you like to say a word?
Reverence.
Isaac King.
My word would actually be holiness.
Holiness. Thank you. Amaran, if you have a word. No words, I just read. Thank you. Shada. Shushu, would you like to say a word? You're still on mute.
Yes, it's compassion and wholeness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Rob?
For me, it's completion.
Amaranth, I see a word.
I'm feeling the dynamism of the unfurling, so my word would be isness.
Thank you. And Peggy.
I feel some kind of sacredness of this meeting, or tenderness, or refined, very
Thank you.
respectful.
Thank you. Anyone want to add? Bert, do you have one?
No, I liked Sam's closing and was just in silence.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So we'll stay for a little bit, and if anyone wants to reflect on your experiences or any personal example, I'm going to stop the recording as the official end of the session and say goodbye to anyone who's watching the recording, and then we can have a little bit of a more personal chat about anything that came up for you that you'd like to explore. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Sam and Rob. So deeply nourishing air and food. Thank you so much. Okay. Cool. So we can just be civilians. That's a word that